Welcome to today's presentation titled The Gamechanger in In Vivo Research, Digitalizing the Lab. I'm Ryan Barbera, Senior Demand Generation Manager at Dotmatics. I'm happy to get us started on this 1-hour webinar. You'll hear from experts in computational sciences, in vivo model development, software integration, and chemical informatics across Charles River Laboratories, RockStep Solutions, and Dotmatics. Our speakers will explore how an integrated software infrastructure can modernize internal operations and deliver greater value to customers. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent out within 24 hours. If you have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A module at the bottom of your screen. If we do not get to your questions at the end of our presentation, we will follow up directly. Now let me introduce our speakers. First, we have Chuck Donnelly, CEO and co-founder of RockStep Solutions.
So yeah, I'm the CEO and co-founder of RockStep Solutions. And my background is I was director of computational sciences at Jackson Laboratory for about 17 years prior to co-founding RockStep Solutions. And before that, I was in the space astrophysics group at UC Berkeley. So from astrophysics to life sciences, and I'll pass it over to the next speaker.
So next we have Jason Davis, product owner director at Charles River Laboratories. Jason has been with Charles River for 14 years, specializing in vivo model development and efficacy studies, as well as ELN software development and integration. And then from Dotmatics, we have Michael Moss, Regional Vice President of Services. Michael has been instrumental in driving strategic delivery and enablement to Dotmatics clients. And last but not least, Pamela Saida, Principal Application Scientist at Dotmatics. Pamela is a specialist in chemical informatics and computational chemistry with extensive experience in drug discovery research and information management. Welcome, speakers. Glad to have you here with us today. And for a quick agenda, we'll begin today with a brief introduction by Chuck, who will lay the groundwork for today's discussion, who will then hand it off to Jason to discuss Charles River's approach to integrating a best-of-breed model. And after that, Chuck will take back over for our panel discussion. So Chuck, I will hand it off to you.
Thanks, Ryan, for the introduction. And I'm really excited about this. This is an area that I'm really passionate about and really founded the company on this. I'm going to go over a very, very high level sort of discussion about digitalization, what, why, and how kind of thing, but it's going to be at a very, very high level. And then Jason will take it to the next level and we'll have the questions. So I always love this quote here. This is actually a takeoff from the quote from Henry Ford, who said, if we asked them what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? So now we, many years later, right, if we asked them what they wanted, they would say a better piece of paper or a better Excel spreadsheet. And the reason why I think this is important, Henry Ford gave them the motor vehicle, right, which transformed the world of transportation. When we're talking about digitalization, we're talking about going from pencil and paper or just static digitized data to digitalization, which is also transforming the world of laboratory research. And it's really bringing us into the lab of the future, what is the lab of the future? Is it here now? Is it 10 years from now? Whatever. We are really, what I would say, in the lab of the future now. So the first question we need to ask is, what is digitalization? What does it mean to be digitalized versus digitized? This comes up a lot in conversation. So I'll just start out. If you digitize data, if you take a piece of paper and scan it, you've digitized that data, right? Or if you type data into an Excel spreadsheet, you've digitized that data. But digitalized data is about taking the data and putting it into a data ecosystem where the data are harmonized, integrated, and digitized, but those data can actually inform business decisions in real time or near real time, or even offline with when you can go back in and explore the data within the data ecosystem. So it's really transformative from taking data in data silos to taking data into a data ecosystem. And I'll just give you a couple common examples. So to move into a completely different domain where everybody would be familiar, would be something like Google Maps. You could have an application that actually had GPS coordinates, and you open up your GPS application and tell you where you are, right? And that would be kind of digitized data. But if you go to Google Maps, it has the location of where you are. It knows where you're going. And it's using the digitalized data, the integrated data that it has available to it to direct your travel. So it might tell you to avoid this intersection, avoid this, take this route, it's going to be faster or whatever. So you have a digitalized experience versus a digitized experience. And if you take that into the research lab, for example, you might be taking a body weight, right? And in a digitized lab, you're taking that body weight and you're putting it into an Excel spreadsheet. But in a digitalized lab, that body weight enters into the digitalized environment or the ecosystem and immediately might send up an alert saying the body weight has changed drastically from yesterday. Send an alert to the veterinarian or make some scientific decision on how to what to do with that study. So you have this environment where the data are sort of added power to the data, and the data are in motion, and it's actually being able to be acted on in real time, or again, near real time, or even to explore the data later within that ecosystem. So that's the real power that we're getting from being digitalized. So one of the challenges with going to a digitalized laboratory is you're going to be implementing a digital transformation, and that has to happen in phases. We've had a number of failures I've witnessed a number of failures where an organization tries to go straight from whatever state they're in to a digitalized lab, and they're not ready. And it basically ends up with, not meeting any kind of business metrics and, disillusioned staff, et cetera. It doesn't actually work, no adoption or little adoption, and you've not really digitalized your lab. So the first step is to get ready. Don't go from not ready to digitalize. Get ready. Bring in some process discipline. I put in the QMS is a good way to sort of implement that process discipline. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Empowering decision makers throughout the lab so that you have a more agile sort of lab where things can move more quickly, and have a startup mindset. So you have to have the lab, the culture of your organization ready for this digitalization process. And then you can go from digitized to digitalized. And in order to really be successful there, you have to allocate team resources, you have to prepare your team, and then begin the deployment. Now, these are 3 bullets or just a few bullet points here, but there's a lot underneath this. I'm not going to go into it today. Perhaps Jason will talk more about it, but preparing the team, change management, building up the, how is it done now versus how is it going to happen, and getting people prepared for this journey into a digitalized world. So again, you're taking people perhaps that are used to riding horses and you're getting them to drive cars, right? So there's got to be a change management involved with that. So I mentioned quality management system, and the reason why I mentioned this is a lot of organizations, and it doesn't need to necessarily be a quality management system, but one of the goals of a quality management system is to go from spending all of your time in this critical urgent, or a lot of your time in this quadrant of critical urgent, and trying to move more into doing stuff that's important and planned for your organization, and getting to this continuous improvement, having KPIs to measure the time lost or the time gained and your return on investment. And also along the journey here, you're going to develop business leaders within your organization. So by implementing a quality program, you're actually doing changing the culture of your organization. So one of the most difficult challenges with digitalizing a research lab, or really diffusing any innovation or diffusing technology into an organization, is cultural readiness. And this has been studied extensively by E.M. Rogers, who published this enormous, great, groundbreaking sort of research that he did on the diffusion of innovation within an organization. So the first thing you have to understand is that if you walk into any organization of any size, 10, 15, 20, 30 people, 100 people, you're going to start to see this this sort of distribution of cultural readiness within your organization. And this is going to be one of the most difficult challenges to address. So 50% of the people, the early majority, the early adopters and the innovators, will go along fairly easily. Now, there's a lot of work that you need to do to bring in the early majority, but that only gets you 50% of your adoption. You have another 50% that are going to be much more difficult to bring along. The late majority, they will come along, 35% or so will come along with some resistance, but they will come along. You have to, as everybody else is getting excited about it. But this is part of the change management, is trying to bring that late majority in. Now, the 15%, the laggards will resist heavily, and that's a challenge. You're going to bring some of them in. Some of them you maybe move to a different task within your organization. Some of them may retire, and but that's going to be a difficult percentage of people that are really going to resist heavily. And this is just the way it is over and over again with any organization of any size. So looking at the technology stack that you're going to want to deploy for digitalizing your lab, some of the things to consider are, how do you future-proof the technology? And that's almost a joke, right? Because technology is doubling every 10 years. We're moving into the world of AI. How do you future-proof the technology you're adopting? So one of the challenges is, if you try to digitalize your lab with on-prem systems, you're going to find that that's not going to have a long future. The cloud is one of the technologies that are considered to be available for future-proof delivery of software and technology to an organization. But you really want to think, is the technology we're adopting going to be stable? Can it be upgraded, and will it stay current for a long period of time? So the cloud is one of those technologies. You also have to reduce or invest heavily in technical debt. So this is something really that our company, the provider usually has to invest in, but also just keeping that in mind, we as a company have people that work almost exclusively on maintaining the currency of our technology. And this is one of the advantages of having a service provided to you, is that the companies are constantly managing the technical debt and trying to ensure that they have a future-proof system in place. You have to empower your IT resources so that they can actually make sure that your technologies are well deployed, and then manage the security posture of your organization. So again, these are really, really big challenges for digitalization. Said it here in a few minutes, but it's actually, big challenges that need some serious consideration. So lessons learned, and I'm going to pass it over to Jason in just a minute. The whole is larger than the sum of the parts. So when you put this digitalized system together, it's so much more powerful than the silos. It's so much more powerful than just a GPS system that can tell you where you are on the planet versus Google Maps, which can tell you how to get to where you're going the best way. So you're going to look for that return on investment, improved quality, efficiency, speed to market, and employee satisfaction. Employee satisfaction is really important because you retain your staff and you have staff that are doing better work. So within this webinar today, we're going to talk about Charles River's digitalization and integrating the Climb platform, which itself digitalizes all of the areas within the Vivo lab, and the Dotmatics platform, which is a total R&D, scientific R&D digital platform. So we have these two things now integrated together within Charles River, and the digitalization is really the whole ecosystem of the organization, Charles River, Climb, and Dotmatics. And with that, I'll stop there. I'll hand it over to Jason to talk about his experience with at Charles River.
Thank you, Chuck, and hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Jason Davis, and I'm the Director Product Owner for our Discovery ELN project here for Charles River. For those of you that know of Charles River and about our company, we're a global company. We're pretty diverse, both geographically as well as in our portfolio offerings. And so one of the big projects that we were tasked with was connecting, right? And Chuck hit on that really well in his presentation where we talked about integration and connectivity. The task we had before us within Charles River Discovery was connecting all of our discovery sites to eliminate silos and also to standardize the platforms that we're using to benefit both our client base as well as our internal users. And so a lot of our sites have legacy software platforms they've used for years. Each one are very strong and tailor fit to their specific business unit. And so right off the bat, you start to see a lot of complexity in us needing a platform that is nimble and flexible, but also rigid in areas that protect key aspects of the scientific work we're doing, animal welfare, IPIC regulations, and also just standardized experience for both the external user as well as the internal user of the software. And so I'll share my screen real quick, and I've put together a slide deck that I'm pretty excited about. It showcases the really nice relationship that we've established between both RockStep and Dotmatics in achieving this goal that we were tasked with. So just bear with me here. We'll get this screen shared. There we go. And so one of the things, as I said, that we were focusing on is establishing where are our pain points for standardization across all of our sites, and how do we play to the strengths of different platforms that we've established these relationships with. So Climb and Dotmatics both have some really, really nice power and functionality that addresses those key issues that we were looking to tackle when we began this project. And so one of the first things that we did was we established, well, what are our key targets for designing this platform? What is the scope of it? What are we trying to achieve? And so really a lot of feedback we got from the various sites within Discovery. And today I'm really going to focus more on the Discovery oncology groups within Charles River. So a lot of the real-time visuals and examples you'll see using the software platforms that we've built will be more oncology based. With that being said, though, there will be expansion into other therapeutic areas, namely metabolic work, cardiovascular work, that kind of thing. But for today's examples, you'll see a very, very strong ties into oncology and Vivo work that we're doing within rodent modeling. And so when looking at the different areas that we needed to address, this is discovery, right? So a lot of our study designs that we're running in the in vivo space are not baked. They're very fluid, they're flexible, both when they're initially designed and also after they initiate and activate into starting up the study. You'll see a lot of fluidity based on the life cycle of that study. So your dosing schedules may change, your data collection schedules may change. You may add or subtract items on a study based on how it's running day to day. And so what we needed to do is we had to find a way to, from a design standpoint, create a system that allowed for really high volume proposal generation that was really dynamic, right? So we did a really good mapping of our various portfolios within the discovery oncology space. We figured out what are all the bits and pieces that goes into a design, and how do we then take those designs and make them efficient from a build standpoint. So if I'm a designer, how quickly can I crank out a study, get it into a client's hands for review, and then move on to next steps? And so we wanted to, again, make it quick, but also comprehensive and really hit that tight turnaround time, getting responses back to our client base. The other issue I think most companies in multiple industry space is that macro and micro resourcing, right? So we know what we're going to do based on the design, but how do we quickly then allocate those tasks of what we're doing, in this case, an in vivo study, out to various staffed departments, right? So how do I resource certain actions on a study to my project management team, to my in vivo operations team, to my QC data review team? So we needed a way to dynamically schedule on both a macro and micro level the various actions that we needed carried out. And then the other thing that we wanted to achieve was really expand our task visibility downstream. So we're able to design a study really well, but how do we cascade all of those actions on that study design into our operational groups? How does it pop up for them to complete? And then once they're in a task, what does that task look like for them? What's the information conveyed to them? We really want to try and eliminate them having to constantly cross-check maybe paper-based protocol reports. We wanted to create tasks within the software that tell them all of the actions they need to carry out and all of that important information that's being conveyed down from your project management groups and your design teams to ensure that you've got really tight compliance on that study as it's being carried out. And then it's the all-important efficiency aspect. And really what we're going to highlight today is we've got multiple departments working in this software. And so efficiency can mean various things depending on the user, right, and their functional role. And so efficiency at the design level comes down to really time motion analytics. How fast can we design a study or a group of studies that range in complexity across a gradient? Or from an efficiency standpoint in task completion, how tight are we on completing tasks correctly? From an operational standpoint, if I'm data reviewing prior to release into a client portal, which we'll take a look at as well, how do I get that information into my QC team, quickly have them review it, kick back any questions to our operational groups, and then get that release to our client? So the client is essentially feeling and seeing a real-time release of data. They're not waiting for maybe a weekly distribution of a data report from an individual. We wanted to achieve at any point in time, the client can go into the software and see exactly how their study's doing on any given day. And so these were kind of our main areas of efficiency and utilization of the software we wanted to create. And then as Chuck hit on, after achieving this, we wanted to be able to measure key KPIs on how well we did with the design, as well as come up with a way to navigate that change management hurdle, which just exists inherently, as Chuck also hit on. So that's kind of an overview of the slides we're going to take a look at. I'll try and highlight some of my favorite areas of the software, some areas we've really worked hard on. Had a pleasure working with the RockStep and Dotmatics team to achieve what we were looking to do here. And yeah, pretty happy with the result and excited to share with you guys where we're at. So the first thing that I wanted to take a look at is we kind of get more from high level to more granular and more detailed views of the software. Was the design is where it really all starts, right? So what is the workflow of our design when we create an in vivo oncology study? And what directions is that design going in? And we really have a bi-directional relationship right now. So when we design a study in our Climb environment, that's RockStep's platform, we have it pricing that study out in Dotmatics, so it's working in that direction. And then upon the design's completion, it's then going in the other direction and cascading all of our tasks down to our operational teams. And so what we did is we kind of broke this down into 4 main areas. So you have your client, your project team, your drugs and therapies that are going to be used on study, in this case, an oncology study. What's our group architecture and structure look like? So how do I quickly design a study that may be 20 plus groups or a very small study? So then we kind of go into more of the complexity of a study design. Some are very easy and quick to build, and historically others have been very more taxing and time intensive to build. So how do we, again, when we go into the efficiency of the build, really get into some complex group structuring, complex sampling and dosing structures that then is conveyed and cascaded downstream into operational groups. And then we get into our task architecture, which is actually one of my favorite parts of this project, is how do we replicate the portfolio across our different sites, but standardize those tasks and quickly get them into a study design and conveyed both to the client and to our operational groups. And so this is kind of where we'll travel today during this presentation, is these different areas that get us from point A on the design and signage of a study to be executed, all the way down to that study's completion and subsequent data conveyance into our client data portal. And so I'm going to reference both Climb and Dotmatics throughout this presentation, starting out with Climb, which is really where everything starts for us. So the design that we're building is all done in Climb, and we needed it to really, again, do 3 different things. We needed it to be scalable, so we needed to be able to expand and contract our designs. We needed the interface to be intuitive for the designer, and we needed to be efficient. And the intuitiveness and the efficiency standpoint, or 2 targets, are actually pretty interconnected. And so what we did in Climb was Our tasks, we were able to standardize into protocol templates. And this was a huge game changer for us because mainly at a very high level, our studies contain dosing tasks, measurement tasks, and sampling tasks. And so if we can kind of get those three items templated and brought into a study very quickly and efficiently, and then once those are dragged into the study or uploaded into our study design, the ability then to micro tweak those to format them into a very specific study design was key. And so what we ended up doing was we mapped out all of the different tasks that a site is using. So all of their different variances of data collection tasks, be that body weights, calipers, body temperature, food and water consumption, any data collection tasks we had templated. And then we just took it a step farther. We went through, okay, what are the different sampling protocol templates you guys would want? And those kind of boiled and distilled down into three main areas: endpoint sampling, when an animal were to hit a specified threshold endpoint; day-specific sampling on a study; or the most complex, time point sampling, based on when a dose was delivered and when that subsequent sampling should take place. And so once we were able to template these three main areas, dosing, measurement, and sampling, we were then able to bring those into the study very, very quickly. And once brought in, we can then fine tune it to match that study's requirement. And this kind of gets into that gradient of complexity that I hit on earlier. So in oncology work, you've got very simplistic model development and maximum tolerated dose studies, typically very small, very 1 to 2 dimensional, and it's mainly just data collection or some straightforward dosing. But then once you get into your more complex efficacy-based studies, PK/PD, IND-enabling, and tox-based studies, you really start to increase the layers to that study. And so being able to achieve that scalable aspect, really make easy studies fast, but also make more complex studies equally as fast, really ties in those three areas of intuitiveness, efficiency, and scalability. And so the templating that we did was our first step. So we were able to essentially create drag and drop templates that would then allow for these designs, whether they're very simple or very complex. The only things that we really needed to teach once we established our templates was what's the order of operations that you add them in. And then once you're there, once you're proficient in that, you're really rolling, you're cooking, and you've designed to study very, very quickly. And so as we get into these subsequent slides, we'll kind of take a look at that first templating step that we took a look at. In this case, and apologize, it may be a little small, you're looking at a view in Climb where we went ahead and built out dosing templates, for instance. So if I had a study that needed to dose on a certain schedule, in this case, we built out bi-weekly dosing schedules that covered 1, 2, 3, and 4-week schedules. By dragging that in, it automatically uploads each one of those days of dosing into the study task. And then all I have to do is assign my groups I want associated to that dosing schedule. And so you can essentially upload as many different dosing templates that were designed and then assign the associated groups for those dosings. And then the same would apply for your data collections, for your body weights, your calipers, or any other data-based collection that you're doing. Those are all templated. You just add a protocol here. It automatically uploads and itemizes it, as you see in that bottom graphic. And then I'm just assigning the associated individual animals or cohort or cohorts to those tasks. And so that's kind of the basis of how we're quickly building studies that allow for an intuitive way to build. We're just teaching our builders to add each protocol type in a certain order. Our project management tasks are added, our data collection tasks are added, our dosing tasks and our sampling tasks are kind of our big four, outside of some other peripheral templates that we use, maybe GVHD scoring, body temperature scoring, consumption scoring, that kind of thing. But that's really our approach to this, to really simplify the way that we design studies. And it really decreases the complexity study to study, because whether I'm building a very simple MTD or model development study or a very complex PK/PD study, I'm still just dragging in the same templates. I may just drag in a few more or additional ones to achieve that design. The next thing, this is probably one of my favorite parts of the design, is as the designer, I'm able to quickly, upload or drag and drop all of the associated tasks and templates and information on the study. But what we wanted to achieve to support both external and internal reference was a digestible view or report, if you will, of what was built. So it allows us then to have something that we can quickly send to a client, we can quickly internally review from a animal welfare, IACUC scientific integrity standpoint, what exactly did we just build and climb? And what we did, these are tailored to the site's preferences. This was a site that wanted to have it really sectioned out into overarching study details. They wanted a dosing table put together that would really capture the group architecture, different treatment plans that were going on. They wanted to be able to showcase situations where groups may be receiving multiple doses on different schedules. And so they wanted a table that really efficiently kind of captures what all was going to be going on that study from a group and a dosing standpoint. And then also, if we had any sampling on the study, we needed a way to table that view, right? To include, okay, what's the time point that's being sampled here? What is being sampled? What container type is it being stored in? All of that information we had tabled up here. And then any standard phrasing or general procedures we wanted to be pulled through as a default based on the type of design that we're running, we'll pull through. And so really the takeaway here is you can create a pretty dynamic report based on what you uploaded in the design phase of that study. This report then is completely exportable in various file formats, and it allows for a very digestible view of studies that can be very helpful and beneficial if it's complex with a lot of different sampling or a lot of different dosing, or you've got a lot of different special instructions you need conveyed. On top of this, though, is any of sampling tasks that we built as a template. They also include in the electronic interface this information as well. So if I'm a technician, I'm going in and I'm going to complete a sampling task, it's going to tell me that specific animal, the group, and then all of the information you see in this table. What am I sampling? How am I preserving it? What am I putting it in? Who am I sending it to? All of that is also captured in our tasks that we built in Climb. And we'll take a closer look at what does a task look like in Climb if I'm a technician going in and completing it. The next thing that we want to hit on then is we've built the study, we've got the digestible review, we've had it reviewed internally, we've sent it to the client, everyone's in agreement, let's do this. The next stage then is how do we schedule this study on various levels, right? When's it going to start? And then once it starts, what tasks are on that study and who's going to do them and when are they going to do it? And so what we ended up doing was when I drag in those templates, each task in an itemized fashion gets pulled in. And Climb allows us to either batch assign multiple tasks. Let's say I just want Jason to do all the bodyweight tasks, but in this case, maybe someone's really exceptional about engrafting, tumors in animals. So I don't want Jason doing that. I want Alexis to engraft my tumors. And so what we were able to do was essentially parse out on individual levels or even batch assign every specific task on a study that was included in the build. And then once the study starts, we embedded in that study automatic mapping. This was huge for us because essentially what it does is it automates all of the timing and scheduling, both the day and the hour, minute, if you need it to, on when that task is supposed to be completed and who is supposed to do it. And so what that replaced was all the manual calendaring that had to be done for tasks that maybe were study specific, or also tasks that were more project management related, pre-activated study tasks, as you'll see here. We've got reminders that then go to specific dashboards in the software that say, hey, you need to order your animals for this study and you need to do it by this date. Or, hey, you've got these animal shipments being received this week. Here are all of the different shipments that are coming in. And so once we were able to assign tasks, we then just made functionally specific dashboards within Climb that if I'm in animal care and I'm receiving the animals onto the site, I only see those tasks relative to me and my role. So you're able to filter very effectively in Climb who sees what and what they're supposed to do. And that really helps with that intuitiveness and that interface experience where you're not being flooded with a bunch of things that aren't relative to you. We can program and default your dashboard to only show you the things that are specific to what you're doing on that study or that project, for instance. And that's kind of where we see the macro side of things, where you get just a really nice task layout, and then the micro scheduling where I can schedule down to the minute I want something completed and who I want to do it or what group of people I want to do it. And so one of the things that we utilize as well is counts. So what the software does for us is it also counts how many actions within this task are required. This is really relevant, I think, most to dosing. So if it's a very complex dosing task, something maybe like an IV dose into a mouse tail vein, you being able to get the scope of that task based on number, how many animals are involved in it, really helps with that micro scheduling, allowing for multiple assignments to ensure those tasks are carried out with a good level of proficiency and compliance. This is now jumping into Dotmatics. One of my favorite parts of this piece of software was we were able to automate all of our drug formulations. And so actually we've got Pam on the call. Huge kudos to Pam and her group who built these sheets for us. We essentially were able to build out multiple different formulation sheets depending on what was required of that drug therapy. And so we've built out co-solvent sheets requiring multiple vehicle components at different ratios, as well as single agent, single dilution sheets or mg per animal sheets. Really what you're looking at here is this sheet will bring in all the relative information of a drug that was delivered to the site. Any type of purity information, specific shipment information gets pulled in. And then what we'll end up doing is we end up building out our groups. And then what the software does is it automatically calculates the amount of drug that's going to be required based on the number of animals, the dosing schedule, the concentration, and how many doses do I need to get out of that preparation. This was a huge time saver for us, especially in the co-solvent sheet field, where it wasn't uncommon to see 4 or 5 different formulation vehicles required, all at different percentages. And depending on your way out, that math is going to change, right, to achieve that consistent concentration. And so this was all done historically by hand. You had multiple verifiers in place. What we were able to do here with the click of a button, you type in, this was the specific layout I'm using today. It updates the math that's required for that day's prep. You complete the prep, and then it also archives that prep in the background. So for a study, I could go in and see every time I prep that drug, and for each one of those preps, the specific volumes that we used to ensure accuracy from an auditing standpoint, which is really huge. Our clients really like to see a very clean document that really goes into all of the actions that were completed on the task. And drug formulation is king here. With it being discovery, we're really exploring a lot of different drugs. There's a lot of unknowns. Ensuring we get consistent and accurate drug formulation, even when we got very complex formulations, was key for us. And so this streamlined that process immensely for us, and it also supported a lot of QC areas as well. When we do get, as a CRO, it's not uncommon to be audited. Our clients, I think, will really like this a lot. We're jumping back into Climb now. So I kind of wanted to showcase the tasks that I would see as a technician. These tasks are completely tailorable to the site that's working with them in Charles River. And so as you can see right now, we're looking at a study that's got more of an RFID type identification associated to it. Sites that need specific naming on their animals group and animal numbers, that's also achievable in the system. And then once we build out a task, one of the things we wanted to achieve is let's really keep it as simple as possible. It's amazing how much information Climb allows to be pulled into a task. So what we ended up doing was we worked with each group within operations, and we said, hey, for a body weight, what's all the information you want to see? Do you want to see just a body weight column as you see here? Or we have some sites that say, hey, I want to capture today's body weight. I want to see what the most recent body weight leading up to today's was. And I also want to calculate all my percent changes. And then I want to flag based on thresholds of that body weight percentage change or tumor volume increase or decrease. What you're looking at here is essentially a task that we built. It's a very simplified form where we just integrated a body weight and a caliper collection that captures the body weight, calculates the volume, and then we set some threshold flags in the system to tell the technician, hey, this study had a 2,000 millimeter cubed endpoint. This animal has reached that. And then we can tailor exactly the messaging we want to see for that animal. In this case, this is just this. There's no sampling involved. This animal needs to be euthanized based on its endpoint guidelines. We do have messaging that says, hey, we're running a TGI. This group statistics has reached this value. Contact your project manager for next steps. So one of the things we really liked was the ability to convey information to the technician a lot in a more enhanced way than what we previously had with legacy software systems. And so what we've done is we've built tasks to cover every single aspect of the design: body weights, calipers, again, temperature scoring, GVHD scoring, cell implantations. Really, the sky's the limit. If you know exactly the inputs you need the technician to see, these tasks are very easy to build and template. And once they're built, they're reusable. So my template I can use across 1,000 different studies because I drag it in kind of as that parent template, and then I'm just fine-tuning and tweaking it to fit the design of the study. And so the main takeaway on this one is we've got a pretty simplified interface. It's tailorable based on what the site requires and what they want their operational groups to see. And then you can embed threshold flags to ensure you're meeting appropriate animal welfare, study design, IACUC guidelines. The next thing that we wanted to hit on was change management. So we figured out how to effectively build a study, ranging in various complexities, right? Using our templates, we were able to fine-tune and establish specific task views for operational groups so that they get all the information they need. They're less reliant on paper. Now it's the all-important step of, well, how do we onboard this? And yeah, I think Chuck really hit it right with his graphic. It's really kind of a mixed bag depending on who you're working with, based on the department, based on what they're used to, right? If you've got a long history of using a legacy product, you're obviously going to have some bias there. And so we really wanted to introduce a training program that was dynamic, both in the way that we taught it, and it was supposed to be learned, as well as what does the classroom look like for us when we're onboarding. And so one of the first things we did was kind of break down the scope of the product and everything that goes on a study. And so essentially, this is just an in vivo based study, I think pretty consistent with what the industry would use. These are all of the different actions on a study. We mapped out, okay, who's going to get trained on and when will they be trained on it? And so what we ended up doing is we tiered the training based on the timing. So I don't want to train my downstream operational groups first because I need to train my design group. And then you're going to have some lag time before the study starts. And so we're really trying to incrementally train so that what I teach, the content that's taught, doesn't become stale and forgotten. And then all of that proficiency you initially gained is then lost just because of stagnancy, right? So timing we thought was very important for us. Small group trainings as well as post-training assignments was key. So we do a lot of remote trainings via conference calls. Those are really effective, especially with a lot of people working remote. We did find from a learning style in a remote environment, 2 to 3 person trainings was really the most effective for us. And then also to kind of ensure that we're keeping that engagement, and also it kind of like strokes that competitive edge with our trainees. We did post-training assignments, nothing too crazy, but essentially just an assignment that captured what we went over that day, right? And then it would lead very well into our next training session. What it also allowed us to do, based on good visibility in Climb, was we're able to see, depending on who the trainee was, who was struggling to complete things. And it allowed us to maybe fine tune for that specific individual, maybe a different training approach, maybe a different learning style. It gave us better visibility in real time as to who was really achieving proficiency, and also who maybe needed a reapproach. In addition to trainings, we find hypercare sessions on a decreasing frequency to be very effective. So once you go live in the system, daily drop-in sessions, no matter who you are using the system, whether you're a client services manager or a technician or somebody on project management, we have these open sessions that allow for drop-ins that allow us to work at their elbows to kind of help them with any gaps, knowledge gaps, right, if they're new to the system. We find this too helps to ease a lot of the anxieties that come about with new software. I know whenever my phone gets updated, I'm like, I'm gonna have to relearn this. You kind of get that nervousness. We do find the response to this approach, both in visible mapping, small group, as well as hypercare, to be really effective. And then coupled with that, something I think has been really, really nice is we have within our internal network, essentially a video library and an FAQ library. So each training piece, whether it's designing a study or how do I order animals or how do I QC my data, we make 3 to 4 minute long videos, very targeted videos, and we break them down into the different areas. And we find that length of video and the specificity of that video really promotes people kind of going in and on their own, trying to figure out what their questions, rather than just solely relying on us as the trainers to help them out. So, and to complement some of the learning styles, having an FAQ sheet or written sheet in conjunction with a video, we think really bridges that gap of learning styles. We find, depending on who you're working with, depending on their functional role, some prefer, just a video, or some prefer an FAQ sheet for quick reference. The other nice thing about this is it also allows analytics of the portal use. You kind of get to see, again, as I was saying earlier, from a homework assignment in Climb, we were able to kind of see who are the ones we maybe need to reapproach or reevaluate our training approach with. Same thing here. We can see what are the most popular videos that are being viewed. If we've got neat propsy videos just getting viewed left and right, that's an indicator to us that, hey, something's not sinking in. And then we can kind of proactively target a retraining, a refresher, or just an overhaul of our approach to that workflow. Jumping back now into Dotmatics, this is pretty cool. And a big shout out again to Pam there and Michael on the call. All of that data that's captured in Climb goes through a QC check in Climb, and then it gets released into Dotmatics. And Dotmatics is really doing quite a few things for us, both in the background and in the foreground. So it priced out the study when we first designed it, allows that proposal to be presented to the client and also internally reviewed. And then on the other side of things, as I collect data in Climb, depending on what that data type is, we then send it over to Dotmatics, and this becomes a portal both for the internal site user to access, as well as your client in real time. So if I'm a client and I'm running 3 studies, I can access only my studies in my client portal. And then depending on the study design, you may have various graphical views. In this case, we had a tumor volume, a body weight, and a survival frequency Kaplan-Meier plot here. But these are very dynamic graphs. You can eliminate group views. You can do mean median views just in the graphical format you're looking at here. You can also do individual animal views and remove and add to those graphs depending on what you're trying to focus on. You can remove outliers. You can really kind of format these graphs right off the bat when you're looking at it at kind of more of a higher level. In addition to data points coming into the study too, we're able to leverage clinical observations. So obviously very important with in vivo work. Our ClinObs come from a controlled vocabulary library that we uploaded into Climb. So if I'm a technician and I'm working with some animals, I then can add multiple clinical observations on an animal. That then goes to my site veterinarian to review that clinical observation and then recommend a treatment plan for that animal. And that's a really nice communication flow that we've got in the system. So we can capture that ClinOb very, very easily, but also we can get it because we've established very functionally specific dashboards. Those ClinObs go immediately to your vet, they're reviewing, and then they're sending back instructions all within the Climb environment. And Dotmatics can do this as well from a communication standpoint. And this was really key for us, realizing that our technicians are in the vivarium at times for hours, right? And so the reliance on a computer or even trying to track somebody down with a phone in a vivarium environment can be quite difficult. By having that in-system communication loop, whether it's rechecking a data point for my QC team or my veterinarian is recommending or scheduling a treatment plan or a recheck on an animal, all that's done real time in the software. And then once those ClinObs are checked, reviewed, and resolved, they're also released into our software. So that's kind of that graphic you're seeing in the top right, that clinical observations, that all gets dragged into a table. Client can access that, and they can see the day of the study, the specific animal, what the observation were, any additional comments. So this is something we're really excited about. And then something additional that you don't see here is outside of graphical views and some tabled views, the exportability in Dotmatics is really, really nice. So we're able to export all of our raw data as well as aggregated data into Excel files. We're able to essentially format them for immediate Prism upload as well. And so that really eliminated a lot of secondary reformatting of data that was coming out of our legacy systems where you had to kind of get them ready for secondary analysis and different pieces of software. A lot of the feedback we got from clients we work with were, hey, we're largely using Prism, for instance. Can we just have the data export be Prism ready? So I just export it and load it right in. And so that was something we worked really closely with Pam and her team on, was to really cut out that secondary formatting step, and it gets that information to the client really quickly. And also that information is now in a much more usable form for the client. So we think from a client service standpoint or customer satisfaction standpoint, that's a really nice enhancement that we've added to this. And then wrapping this up, we've talked about design, we've talked about the task interface for operations, we've talked about the data as it comes through and what does that look like. As we're going live with this product across both of these platforms, efficiency and KPI targets are a great way to establish how successful were we with this MVP rollout, and where do we need to go with it, right? So, this is just the first stage of the rollout with future enhancements, definitely on the books as well. We've really worked hard with our users to get a really nice, healthy backlog on where do they want to go with it. And one of the things from a change management standpoint, as a barometer of how effective we've been, has been the ability to get people engaged and start offering up new ideas. So it's not like you're just telling them to use the software. They're thinking on their own about how to improve it and increase and enhance it. That's pretty cool, I think, as you're really starting to have an impact on people. And so I believe I'm short on time, but these are kind of the key KPI targets, pretty standard, I think, especially for a new product where we're looking at support, study velocity, and then also error reduction are huge for us. And that completes my presentation. I'm going to hand this back over to Chuck, and I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Jason. And that was really a brilliant presentation. I really, I sort of led this, started this off with, Google Maps and the idea of digitalizing the journey. And you really captured that, how Climb and Dotmatics together and how the data inform all of the decision processes within the organization. And then you also really focused in on the organizational readiness piece and how to get your teams ready to adopt. So it was really, really excellent. I want to ask a couple questions, and then we probably turn it over to some audience questions as well. But I'm going to start out with Pam. What technical challenges were posed by the integration, and how did Climb and Dotmatics work to resolve them?
Get myself off mute. So we kind of built this up from the ground up, working with Climb. The Dotmatics platform is designed for integration with other systems, knowing that we're not going to be the be-all and end-all of everything. So we had to work through some API issues, but we have a strong suite, and that worked out. We got all that sorted. As Climb developed new capabilities and workflows for this project, we had to adapt to that too. And we were able to work really efficiently and cooperatively with the Climb folks to address anything that came up.
Excellent. And a question from Michael really quickly. What trends in the digitalization change curve are you seeing in the industry?
Well, I'll just take myself off mute as well. I think it's important looking at the journey that Jason sort of provided there and some of the early work that you were sort of discussing there in terms of that change management piece. It's super important to get the organization bought into that process, and wider from that, looking at what Jason was outputting in terms of the efficiency to the bench scientists and the clinic and the technicians, looking at more holistically what's the longer term aim with all of the data that you're capturing and how can you use that. So within the Dotmatics platform, you can see some of the visualizations that we've got. That's a great starting point. The accessibility to output into the different apps that we've got. We've heard Prism, but then looking at the modality beyond that as to where can we gain more value and more insight. And it's not just necessarily clicking your fingers and hoping that we find some insight, right? There's got to be a bunch of work that's done behind that. And so with further expansion upon the Dotmatics products, we've got Luma now that can help facilitate that. And that's where the thought leadership is really going in terms of that change piece. How do we continue to grow what we're doing from the foundational piece, implementing great products like Climb and doing the great work with the ELN at Dotmatics?
Very good. And I'll just a quick question for Jason, and then I think we probably want to have one or two time for some audience questions really quick. But Jason, when you started this whole project, thinking about the project, it was years ago at this point. I think it's been a couple of years in the works here. What were some of the core objectives of the digitalization project, and what were some of the KPIs you used to measure to see how you're doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for us, it was definitely connectivity was the big driver for us, both within the site as well as within the network of discovery oncology in this case. So we were really blown away by just how diverse the portfolios could be site to site, and also the internal workflows too. So how does a site operate in North Carolina as opposed to Freiburg, Germany? Just the processes of designing a study and the completion of that study really varied a lot. And so those were big drivers for us, was how do we connect the site internally as well as externally? And that's really the first step to globalizing a product, right? Because that's what we really wanted to achieve, was whether I'm working on a study in Europe or in the US, as a technician, I'm seeing a very similar interface. But also, if I'm a client working with those two sites, that experience is the same as well. That portal looks the same. The digestible view of the report looks very familiar. And what that allows us to do is to open up work avenues into different sites across the company. And what that does is it really cuts down our turnaround time. So from a KPI standpoint, when we talk about efficiency, if we've really standardized the working environment globally, we can place work then across our different sites much more easily based on their bandwidth, based on their proficiencies. And so that was something that was a huge driver, kind of a high level KPI for us, is how do we unify a pretty diverse working group using one product. And so that was probably one of the main things we first took a look at.
Gotcha. So I think we have an audience question. Ryan, are you?
Yeah, we've got a couple here.
Okay.
And whoever wants to take it can take it. So the first one here is, can it format the output data in a send format?
I think that's something that I should take probably. Right now, we're not outputting data in send compliant format. It's something that we'll, looking at, but it's not, we do not manage send specifically as a format.
All right. And then second one, is it a combination of Climb and Dotmatics platform?
So I can address that. All of the study design and management takes place within Climb, being the expert tool in that in vivo study area. But with the integration to Dotmatics, that data is made available within Dotmatics for post-study processing, like the graphing that Jason showed and report generation. Dotmatics also provides a repository for kind of shared information. So we manage the test articles within Dotmatics, and Climb pulls that list. So we don't have to duplicate data that's used by both of the systems.
Great. Yeah, well, I think that's probably all we have time for. I don't know. Oh, there's one more that just came in. Is there a limit to how much data you can store?
Within the Climb platform, not a practical limit. Obviously, there's only so much data you can store on the planet Earth, probably. But because we're using the Azure cloud platform, we have access to almost infinite amounts of storage.
Great.
I'd echo that answer for Dotmatics as well.
Yeah. Great. Well, yeah, we are out of time here. This was absolutely excellent. I hope that everyone watching got a lot out of this. I know I did. If you do have any lingering questions, I think there's a way to contact us, or you can go to Dotmatics or any one of our websites and ask the appropriate party. But thank you so much again to our speakers, and thank you to everyone who attended. This was very informative, and hope everyone has a great day.